everyone, Andy Anderson here from Convergint's Global Cloud and Data Center team, bringing you Access Live here at GSX. I'm here with Wayne Doris from Access Communications. Wayne, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
We're here to talk about data center security and some of the approaches that we take and considerations we have when we're looking at securing a data center facility. So Wayne, what are some of the key factors that Access considers when we're looking at data center security and the resiliency of a data center?
Sure. Well, first off, we want to protect the perimeter. So perimeter protection is our first key pillar. The second one would be operational efficiency. How do we get other data from the data center and how to protect that as well? Cybersecurity is a key pillar as well. We're in a data center, a protected environment, protecting data, but we also want to ensure everything that we're putting on devices to help protect aren't adding to the problem. And then last but not least, we want to ensure that we are regulatory compliant with everything that we do.
Well, regulatory compliance is a huge impact in data centers. Many of our customers, I was talking to Stream Data Centers earlier today who uses your product. They mentioned to me how key it is for them and their customers to meet compliance and SLAs within their environment. As we're starting to consider compliance and SLAs and making sure that the facilities are up and on time all the time, what do you see as the impact to that when we're looking at it from a design perspective?
Oh, absolutely. You have to include resiliency and redundancy. The impact of regulatory compliance is that you have to ensure not only do we say that we do these things, but we have to have good proof of evidence that we do. So not only certifications for devices and solutions, but we have to also have, this is an attestation that we can prove. So third-party audited accreditations are always helpful to help with that due diligence. So things like SOC 2, ISO 27001, even on your device certifications, EN 303645 to say we've met this minimum cybersecurity standard. But more importantly, we want to ensure, data centers have not only regular data that everybody else is moving through, but also privacy data. So how do we do that? If we look to the European Union, we see newer legislations like NIS2 really starting to hammer out fines for if you're not compliant or you can't comply. So those are the trends that we tend to see starting to also happen here in the US. With critical infrastructure acts, things like that, we see more and more where it's going to become more and more onto the shared responsibility of the customer, the data center provider, and the manufacturer.
Well, and I think we're seeing that already in areas like Illinois with BIPA and some of the local state laws. I think being prepared for that compliance and regulatory aspect is paramount for any industry, let alone data centers in particular.
Absolutely.
One of the things also we consider when we're talking about compliance is the serviceability and operations.
Yes.
Access has had a long-standing policy of warranting their equipment for a long period of time. Especially from a cybersecurity perspective, how do you consider the life cycle of a product after the initial implementation?
So that's a great question that you asked. So the first thing that we've done is that we actually now offer, before you buy a product on the website, you can see how long the software support for that product's going to be. So before you make a purchasing decision, I can know that the operating system, the Access OS that we use for our devices is going to be supported to 2033 or whatever that date is. The second thing we do is on our transparency side, we have a software bill of materials. So in your data center from the cybersecurity side, you will be scanning devices that are on it. You're going to want to know, okay, it's an Access OS software, but what other open source components are beneath that software? And am I going to be impacted if there's vulnerabilities in those components? So we offer you a software bill of material that allows you to take that repository so that your cyber or IT security team can better get an idea of what's going on in that aspect. But more importantly, we offer two different kinds of operating system tracks. We have the active track, where we continually add new features and functions, but we also have the long-term support track, which each of those tracks is supported for 5 years. So during the lifetime of a product, we will support multiple long-term support tracks. So you can take a product today and know that you're going to get software and vulnerability patching for a good 7 to 10 years, depending on where it is in the buy cycle.
These facilities, when they're being built, are built for 10, 20, 30 years. So considering the entire life cycle of the hardware you're putting in is paramount. One of the things we see in data centers is that there's some misconceptions about the industry. maybe it's that the process and the project is a one-time consideration. What are some of the other things that you're seeing as maybe misconceptions in the data center industry?
Yeah, the biggest misconception that I usually get is typically your physical security products are on a separate network. It could be air-gapped or separately VLAN. The problem is typically if it's air-gapped, I don't have to continue to do these updates on products. And that's not true. You still have insider threat, and eventually we see where people, or I should say IT teams, want to be able to say, yes, this is what we're doing in the data center for where we're sending data and where that important IT data is going, but also we want those same types of controls of what's going on the physical security side. So it's a blended environment as far as operational. And more importantly, we are doing more and more with AI analytics and metadata so that people want to take that information that we're providing on a camera. It could be temperature data, could be how many people are physically in a location, and that's very important for after the fact, after hours. Do I have people where they shouldn't be? And you also want to help and use other technologies like radar and audio to also supplement those solutions as well.
Well, and that goes back to an important aspect we talked about earlier. Considering the long-term operations means you need to consider the serviceability of the products you're putting in for the long haul as well. How accessible they are, both physically and virtually, whether it's from a network perspective or from a physical maintenance of the camera. And so working with partners like Axis, we're able to find a successful maintenance plan with many of our customers to combine both in-house and leveraged resources.
I think one of the other things that gets highly overlooked there is you do have how long it's physically going to be there and how long the software is going to be supported, but what happens to decommission?
Absolutely.
That is probably one of the more important parts. I have watched where other manufacturers, you have critical information, whether it's network data in your devices that end up on a secondary market, and all of a sudden people go, oh, hey, I kind of have some good network information telemetry here. I could gather and use that. So the other thing that I often see overlooked is not a good decommissioning plan for what to do once a product has reached its life cycle end. What do you do with it? How do I decommission it and ensure that I have all the critical data not in that product anymore?
Well, and planning for end of life is important from a number of aspects. We need to make sure that we're considering it from a budgetary perspective so the business can plan for it in advance. I think the other aspect of it is from an ESG perspective as well, and making sure a decommissioning plan is considering the environment and potential reuse of the physical hardware. They're valuable commodities that are being used to create and manufacture these cameras, so definitely something to be considered.
Yeah, definitely.
I know we only have a couple minutes left, so
Sure.
Want to close with maybe one emerging technology or best practice that you're seeing across the industry that if you were to recommend one thing to our viewers here live, what would you recommend that we look into?
Absolutely. Most Axis cameras and devices have further capabilities through our ACAP platform, our Axis Camera Application Platform. So we have 100 different other analytics or metadata providing for you. So I would say take advantage of MQTT, which is a protocol where you can take all of this other different telemetry data, whether it's temperature, thermal, regular analytics for is a person, a car, whatever, but feed that information in. It will help you be operationally efficient so that your investment in a physical security device isn't just to do its primary function of keeping physical access control or providing video, but that it's also providing you business data for, hey, how often are we moving people through here? Is that affecting my door hardware reschedule for how often do I have to maintenance that? So try to leverage, you're already making the investment. I would say make use of all the metadata and AI capabilities that you can on an Axis device and make use of it and get other data that you can use throughout your enterprise.
Well, and I think that's something that we've seen impressive amongst working with our customers in Axis is customers are asking to do more with the physical devices that we have. We want more data, we want actionable data, and we want to be able to do something with it that matters to safety and security.
Yep.
So when we're considering this, Axis has a great in-house platform of analytics and ability to be able to pull data from the native cameras today. But again, like you mentioned, the partner ecosystem is so great. And being able to use the ACAP platform to have additional analytics added onto the hardware is just another best practice to be able to do more with less.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The important thing is to understand that ACAP platform isn't closed. It's open architecture. So not only can integrator like you write and use it, but also your final end customer. They can have teams of developers that can also use and work with this platform to go get data as well. So that's the nice thing. It's not just locked in. If there isn't an ACAP for you that does what you need, certainly there's developers that can out there help you do it.
Well, Wayne, really appreciate your time and having some of this discussion here today about data center security and some of the approaches that we have throughout the industry.